The Cold War was a scary time. Between World War II and 1990, people wondered whether the world's two biggest superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, would ever have a direct conflict that would lead to a nuclear war. By the late 80s, the end of the Soviet Union was near, and while ballads and big hair bands seemed to be a winning formula during this time, the German band The Scorpions had the proud distinction of having their ballad Wind of Change become synonymous with the fall of communism. The video, directed by Wayne Isham, which was set to the backdrop of the Berlin Wall falling, only solidified this image. In actuality, the song's origins predated the fall of the Berlin Wall, had nothing to do with Germany, and some people believe the song was written by the CIA to help build up pro-democratic movements in the Soviet Union. Today, let's explore the history of the song. Given the contents of the track, you could be forgiven for thinking that the German band The Scorpions were from Berlin. In reality, they were from Hanover, which was about 200 miles to the west. That's not to say that their childhood wasn't anxiety-ridden, with Klaus Meine telling Rolling Stone, "We always said we were lucky that we grew up in West Germany. It's hard to believe today, but there was only 3 channels on German television, and one of them came in black and white from East Germany. And when you saw the East German television, it was just like a dark world. It was very confrontational for people in the West. It was like you could feel we were not very welcome over there, really. That divide between East and West was very tense. We grew up with jeans and with Elvis and with bubblegum, very much Americanized. But over there, they grew up with the Soviet Union. They grew up with Khrushchev, who banged his shoes on the table at the United Nations. That was like a threat, you know. When Khrushchev hit the table, it was, wow, the next war is just around the corner, he'd say. Wind of Change was not written about Germany or the Berlin Wall, but rather the Moscow Music Peace Festival, which took place in August of 1989. On the bill at the show were, of course, the Scorpions, who played alongside Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Motley Crue, as well as Ozzy. And local bands included Gorky Park, who were also on the bill. The festival would be broadcast on MTV. Coincidentally, a few months later, in November of 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and it was around this time the band wrote and recorded the song Wind of Change. The track would appear on the group's 11th album, Crazy World, which would be released in November of 1990. The song would become synonymous with the fall of the Iron Curtain. The Moscow Music Peace Festival would not be the first time the Scorpions played Russia, as they had previously played a handful of shows in Leningrad in 1988 after being denied the opportunity to play Moscow the same year. Guitarist Rudolf Schenker would tell Rolling Stone, the authorities, they were afraid that rock and roll comes into their country, especially to Moscow, because there are many different nationalities from the eastern part of Europe living there, as well as Russians. They thought maybe a riot could happen, so they didn't allow us to play in Moscow, but offered to let us play more shows in Leningrad. By the time the Scorpions played the Moscow Music Peace Festival, they were pretty well known in the Soviet Union, and unlike the other acts, they saw a big change in the country over the span of 1 year, with Klaus Meine telling Rolling Stone, "There were so many emotional moments in Moscow. I guess I could have been Bon Jovi or Motley Crue. Any of those guys could have gone home inspired by what they saw, but for them it was like, hey, we rocked the Soviet Union, dudes." For us, maybe it was different. We saw so many changes from Leningrad in 88 to Moscow in 89. That was the inspiration for Wind of Change, he'd say. In the same interview, Meine would recall how during one of the band's days in Moscow would serve as an inspiration for the first line of the track, saying, "We took the boat down the Moskva River, and we were on this boat with all the bands, with the MTV journalists, the Red Army soldiers. It was an inspiring moment for me. It was like the whole world was in that one boat talking the same language, music." Director Wayne Isham, who was at the Peace Festival, recalled to Rolling Stone how a lot of the acts on the bill had huge egos, but the Scorpions didn't, and they were simply there to rock. It was during the Scorpions set that the Red Army soldiers turned to face the stage and threw their caps and jackets in the air. The Scorpions, who grew up in the shadows of the Soviet Union, could sense that the Cold War would soon be over. By the band's second day in Moscow, Wind of Change had been written. While Meine would mostly write the lyrics, he would present the complete song to the band. Initially, when Meine presented the song to his bandmates, he didn't think it was fully done as he whistled his way through the track, something his bandmates were unsure about, and the same could be said for the record label. But once they took the whistling out, they felt the song didn't feel right and kept the whistling in. Released in November of 1990, Crazy World would go on to sell 7 million copies worldwide. Wind of Change would be the third single released from the album, with Schenker telling Rolling Stone how the song's success was unexpected, revealing it was actually the French people who put out Wind of Change as a single first. They always liked the slow songs very much. Still Loving You from 1984's Love at First Sting we say that was the song of the French baby boom. People were making love to it, making babies to it, so Wind of Change became very popular there, and from that came the kind of revolution of the song from one country to the other. The next few months the song was #1 everywhere, the wall had come down in Germany, and the song became the soundtrack of the most peaceful revolution on earth, he'd say. In 2020, a new podcast would be launched that looked into the rumor that the song was not written by the Scorpions, but rather the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA. It would be a writer for The New Yorker named Patrick Radden Keefe, along with Spotify, Pineapple Street Studios, and Crooked Media, who put together an 8-part podcast that featured interviews with the members of the Scorpions themselves, as well as historians and ex-members of the agency, to dive deep into the history of the song. The podcast also explored the history of the US government and American culture's infiltration on the Soviet Union during the 70s, as well as in Africa. Keefe had written extensively on the US National Security Agency, or NSA, in his 2005 book Chatter. Keefe would allege that one of his sources claimed that the CIA was behind the song. He would tell the Guardian newspaper, "The CIA saw rock music as a cultural weapon in the Cold War. Wind of Change was released a year after the fall of the Berlin Wall and became the anthem for the end of communism and the reunification of Germany. It had this soft power message that the intelligence service wanted to promote," he'd say. So what did the Scorpions have to say about this claim? Well, Mino would add, "It's not true at all. It shows how powerful music can be. If they think the song was like a tool to help bring down communism, I mean, it just underlines in a heavy way that if that would be possible, the power of music. We live in times where conspiracy theories are all over the place in many directions," he'd say. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.